It Had My Mother's Voice, Part 2, by Julian J. Alexander. I locked the study door and moved my small book cabinet in front of it as some kind of barricade, fearing that at any moment I would hear a series of sharp raps on the door, followed by the eerily calm voices of one of those kids attempting to lure me out. Those dead kids. The only gun I had in my possession was an old shotgun, which I always left outside in the shed. There was no way I was going to get it because I wasn't about to leave the study, let alone the house. I curled up in the corner, grabbing the only slightly effective means of defense I had, a rusted letter opener from a pen pot above my desk. I brandished it with a quivering hand, my imagination filling the emptiness of the silent house with sickly taunts of the voices of those corpses. "What are you going to do with that, Oscar? Are you going to kill us, Oscar? Surely you know that we're already dead." I passed out somewhere between 3 and 5 hours later, the exhaustion of my experience taking its toll on me. I woke with a start as the sunlight streamed in through the window, immediately grabbing the letter opener from the floor and staggering to my feet. From what I could see, the study door had remained locked during the course of the night, and the cabinet had not moved an inch. Cautiously, I opened the door, still clasping the feeble makeshift weapon and surveying the hallway, expecting to see something out of place, even if it was as insignificant as a missing ornament from the table. I slowly moved from room to room, my breath quickening and my grip on the letter opener tightening with each door I opened. The house was untouched. There was nothing at all that signified that anyone had broken in, yet there was still undoubtable tension in the air. I sat atop the stairs, pondering what to do about the situation, if there even was anything to do at all. There was no denying that there was truly something out there, something that wanted to hurt me. Those kids, those things, knew my name somehow, and they were mocking me, reveling in my confusion. At that moment, the only thing I could think to do that would bring me any comfort at all was to pay a visit to the old farmer who owned the field and tell him what happened. He was a hard-faced man whom I had never spoken to before. Hell, I'd only ever seen the guy from a distance. Of course, I didn't expect him to buy a story about how I stumbled across a gathering of talking corpses next to a bonfire, so I settled on simply telling him that a group of teenagers were routinely messing around on his land. I left the house and walked out of the driveway, the afternoon air sticking to my skin. The farmer lived at the end of the road, in a substantially large white farmhouse, next to a barn where I assumed he kept his tractor and other machinery. I paused at the half-open gate, looking round his driveway to see if he would emerge from the small shed that sat beside his house, the ancient wooden door hanging half open. No sound emitted from inside, so I strolled into the driveway and up to the front porch. I knocked, timidly, on the screen door, listening closely for any movement inside. After about 30 seconds of silence, I knocked again, louder this time, hoping that somebody was home, even if it wasn't the old farmer. I heard what sounded like footsteps on the stairs inside, and I breathed a sigh of relief, but drew it back in when my eyes shot from the door to the window on the second floor of the house. The old farmer was watching me through the window, that characteristic scowl creased across his face as he studied my features. I raised my hand and gingerly waved to him, opening my mouth to speak but finding myself unsure of what to say, or if he'd even hear me if I spoke at all. Hello, sir? I need to speak to you about something." The man sat, unmoving, still peering at me with the same expression on his face. About 10 more painfully awkward seconds passed by when, suddenly, his eyes widened and his frown disappeared, his face descending into an expression of shock. Before I could get another word out, the shutter slammed, violently closed, obscuring the man from my vision. I watched as the blind on the small of the window above me was pulled down in a flash, and no more than 10 seconds later the window on the right side of the second floor had its shutters drawn too. I was too bewildered by the situation to move from where I was standing, my body starting to tremble. I heard the thunderous rumble of the man descending the stairs, and watched with rapidly growing confusion as the living room shutters were closed as well. A few moments later, I saw the door crack open, very slightly, and panic started to well up in my gut. The first thing I saw, before so much as a strand of wispy hair on the man's head, was the cold steel barrel of a shotgun, peeking through the crack in the door. I didn't wait for the door to open all the way. I sprinted out of the driveway, turning only once to see the farmer standing on his porch, lowering the gun as he realized I was too far away now for the shot to reach me. It occurred to me, as I rushed back to the house, that the man had fully intended to use that weapon, and somehow, I knew it wasn't just so he could fire a warning shot into the dirt next to me. Not one word had been exchanged between that man and I in the month that I had been here. I had been so sure that he had seen me before, even if it was only across the field or through a window. Yet when he had seen me standing outside his house, he wore a look of the most unimaginable terror on his face. What the hell was going on? I retrieved the age-old shotgun from the shed and stumbled inside, confused beyond belief. Something sinister had a vice grip over this place, and now that I was new in town, it wanted me in its grip too. I had no idea what kind of link a gathering of should-be dead people had with a crazy old man pulling a gun on anyone who knocked on his front door, and I didn't want to know. All I knew was that this place was fucking crazy, and I needed to protect myself. Panic leaked from every pore on my body in droplets of sweat as I ran down into the basement, my racing mind finally settling on my first course of action. I flicked the light switch, and after 5 seconds of the bulb emitting shuttered bursts of light, it sprang to life and illuminated the somewhat bare basement floor. I looked into the large alcove in the right-hand corner, where I found what I was looking for. My dad had been somewhat obsessive about storing wood for the winter months, and as a result the basement acted as a storage space for all the logs, kindling and chopped wood that he would bring in during the autumn. At the foot of the great pile of logs that was stacked up to the ceiling lay what must have been around 200 wooden planks, all crudely cut into different shapes and sizes. But wooden planks nonetheless. I hurriedly grabbed an armful of them, maybe 9 or 10, and ran back up the stairs, dumping them in a heap by the front door, and then retrieved the toolbox, containing a sturdy hammer and several boxes of 9-inch nails from a dusty kitchen cabinet. I silently apologized to my dad for what I was about to do to the interior of the house, and got to work. I'd been putting boards up for nearly an hour when I first heard it. My arm ached from steadying the planks in order to hammer them in place, and there had been more than one occasion where a misplaced strike had left my thumb throbbing in pain. I had been slumped against a window in the upstairs guest room when the unmistakable crunch of gravel under heavy boots filled my ears, making me tense up even more than I already was. I moved slowly away from the window and picked up the rusty shotgun that had been leaning up against the wall as I worked. With shallow breaths, I peered through the tiny crack in one of the boards, and there, pacing around the yard with gun in hand, was the old farmer, the same scowl upon his face. Clearly, he had not just intended to chase me off his property, because now it was apparent that he had come to kill me. He paced the yard angrily, yelling something in a thick Suffolk accent that was mostly indecipherable. It sounded like, "Where are you, you sick bastard?" But through the wall it was considerably muffled. I watched intently, unblinking. The farmer whirled round all of a sudden, his attention seemingly caught by a sound that had come from the shed. Without a moment's hesitation, the farmer pressed the shotgun butt against his left arm and a brief explosion of light was emitted from the weapon's muzzle, followed by the splintering of old musty wood as a hole was ripped in the side of the shed. Knowing full well that the old man had assumed I was in there, and confirming my fear that he fully intended to blow my head off if he found me, I had considered calling the police earlier, but saying that a man pulled a gun on me whilst I was on his property would hardly be enough to get anyone out here, especially since he could argue that I was trespassing. Now, the man was shooting a gun on my property, and I had reason to believe that my life was in danger. The nearest landline phone was in the hallway outside the bedroom, so I quietly made my way to the door, crawling on all fours to make sure that the man did not see so much as the top of my head through the crack between the boards. As soon as I had rounded the corner, I darted to the table and swiped the phone up from its cradle, punching the number 9 3 times. The drawn-out tone sounded in my ear as I raised the phone up, which was suddenly cut short by the operator's voice. "Emergency? Which service do you require? Fire, police, or ambulance?" "Police." I breathed unsteadily into the receiver. A couple more seconds passed, and then the comforting human voice of the emergency call taker sounded through the receiver. 999, what's your emergency? The culmination of the severity of the situation and the relief I felt that I had got through to the police had opened a floodgate inside my brain, and the information spewed forth from my mouth faster than I could think. "My name is Oscar Connors. I'm at Sturtridge House, near Farnham. There's a man in my yard who's trespassing on my property. He's got a gun." The reassuring voice of the call handler came again. "Sir? Sir, try to calm down. Where is the exact location of this residence?" I tried to steady my breathing. "It's Studtridge House, fairly close to Farnham. The postcode is GU10 2JX. "Okay, sir. You say the trespasser has a weapon?" "Yes. He's been walking around the grounds with it for the last 5 minutes, and he just started firing it randomly." "Where are you now, sir?" "I'm inside the house, but I think he knows I'm here." "Find a safe place to hide if you can, sir. I'm sending 4 officers down to—" He paused so suddenly that I thought the line had gone dead. "What did you say your name was, sir?" I hesitated before answering, confused as to why the handler had changed the subject under such pressing circumstances. "Oscar Connors." Another drawn-out second of silence hung in the air. "Oscar Kenneth Connors." I felt my heart sink. How did this handler know who I was, and more importantly, what the hell did it matter? I responded slowly, my voice an amalgamation of confusion and suspicion. "Yes?" The handler did not respond to what I had said, but I instead heard the faint sound of multiple people talking over the receiver. Thinking he had perhaps not heard me, I spoke again with slightly more confidence. "Yes, my name's Oscar Kenneth Connors." Suddenly, the background noise from the receiver cut off, and silence crowded the house again. The handler had hung up on me. It feels weird to say even now after the chaos of the last 2 days. The emergency services had hung up on me. I tried calling them again multiple times, but I was met with nothing more than a dull, ceaseless drone. I set the phone down slowly and leaned back against the wall as it dawned on me that no one was coming to help. I returned to the guest room once again, keeping myself low to the ground just in case the man was trying to peer through the crack in the boards for any sign of movement. I positioned myself next to the window, and then cautiously scanned the yard for the whereabouts of the madman. The yard was empty, but the farmer had certainly left his mark. The hole in the shed was now wider, and it looked like he had either taken another few shots at it or just decided to kick it in. I waited for about a minute to see if his hunchbacked frame would emerge from the shed, but nothing came. Not a single sound emanated from the yard, and so I took the shotgun from its resting place and made my way down the stairs and walked into the kitchen. One of the kitchen windows had only been partially boarded up, so I peered through the thin net curtain, worried that the man would catch sight of me if I moved it aside. Through the wafer-like fibers of the curtain, I could see the man latching the gate back up, the shotgun now resting in the crook of his arm. Relief washed over me as I saw him walking back down the road towards his house. A small victory among all the odds that were against me. I pulled the curtain back very slightly as I watched him disappear from view, hoping that now I could finish boarding up the windows and figure out who could possibly help me. Just as I was about to let the curtain fall back into place, I caught sight of a figure standing inert next to the gate. The farmer had not acknowledged this person as he trudged past, which I thought to be incredibly strange. I moved the net curtain back further and squinted at the person who was standing there. I instantly regretted my curiosity as my vision was filled with the same pale skin and decaying flesh of the corpse that had spoken to me the previous night, the light breeze now toying with her straggly dark hair. I pulled my eyes away from the gruesome sight for just a second, and when I looked back at the window, the girl was not as she had been moments before. Her skin, while still fair, was no longer pockmarked with sores, and her hair shone in the afternoon sun, falling neatly upon her shoulders. Despite this, her face was contorted into a terror-stricken expression, her mouth agape and her eyes wide with fear. I was overcome with sickening and very alien feeling of déjà vu, as though without the mask of death that she had worn up until now, I knew exactly who she was and what she was seeing through her eyes. I turned away and let the curtain fall back over the window, wishing the mocking phantom away. I tried to force the fear back down, picking up another board and hammering it into the wall, covering up the image of the girl who may or may not still have been there. I kept putting boards up with a robotic work ethic, until I lost count of exactly how many I had hammered into the walls, and the ache in my joints didn't bother me anymore. It's 10:30 p.m. now. Around half an hour ago I heard the sound of tires on gravel, as what sounded like 3 cars rolled into the driveway. Through the tiny cracks in the wooden planks, I could see rhythmic flashes of red and blue light that illuminated the rooms of the house for fragments of seconds, and I can intermittently hear a man talking through a megaphone, barking out threats and sometimes using my name. This thing, whatever it was attempting to lure me outside yet again by imitating a squadron of police officers. I let out a humorless chuckle to myself when the light started up. I had to admit, this thing was getting good at trying to coax me out of my ragtag stronghold, but I knew what it wanted. It was ceaseless for almost 30 minutes, but now something's changed. There's a new voice coming through the megaphone now, a stark contrast to the low male shout that had been addressing me for the last half hour. It's the frail stutter of an elderly woman, a heavy dose of concern in its tone. My mother's voice. I had been ignoring everything the police officer's voice had been saying for the last half an hour, but now, I guess I was listening. The words it said in my mother's voice began slowly and timidly. Oscar? Are you in there? Jesus Christ, it sounded just like her, down to every individual inflection. I listen as tears well up in my eyes, exasperated that something would be so malevolent as to take the form of my own mother in order to get to me. Oscar, the voice continues, more assured now. I know you've done some bad things, sweetheart. You're very poorly, but these men can take you somewhere safe. I choke back the lump in my throat and yell as defiantly as I can. You're going to have to try harder than that. Bad things? It's just screwing with me now, putting shit in my head to confuse me. I make sure the shotgun is loaded, and I point it at the front door of my vantage point at the top of the stairs, waiting for it to fly off its hinges at any second. There's nothing that's going to bring those young men and women back, Oscar. And I don't I don't know if we'll ever understand why you did what you did, but please, just come outside. It's just ad-libbing bullshit now. My name is Oscar Kenneth Connors. I'm 33 years old, I was born in Surrey, and I worked for an estate agent just outside of London for 10 years. For the last year I've... Bullshit. It's ad-libbing bullshit to get me outside of these walls. For the last year I've been... Images I can't place flash through my mind. A skinny blonde kid in a red hoodie stumbling out of a bar. Fresh-faced young man and a girl with dark hair, both sat around a bonfire. Oscar, please! My mother's voice again. I stand up and walk to the study, flick the light on and walk over to a weathered cardboard box in the corner of the room. I open it, revealing a stack of printed news articles, crumpled and messy. I hear shouting outside and a violent thud against the front door. The news page at the top of the pile is dominated by 4 pictures, profiles of 3 young people whom I now recognized all too well as reality lodged itself uncomfortably into my brain. These 3 photos are dwarfed by a much larger photo, one of my face. I look around at the hundreds, maybe thousands of outdated documents that I had been printing over the last, God knows how long, in an attempt to drown out the real world. There was no new job. It was nothing like that at all. Another thud echoes through the house, followed by a clatter as one of the boards falls to the floor. I can't bring myself to read the headline that sits above those pictures. The front door is forced open, and gruff shouts fill the house. My eyes dart to the mirror in the corner that reflects the top of the stairs. My diseased mind projecting the image of a dead, expressionless girl into the vacant space, her form a disheveled parody of the young woman on the newspaper page. 3 people in police uniforms ascend the stairs with their weapons drawn, and her ghost turns to dust. Hi everyone, the Archivist here. Really hope you enjoyed that story. If you'd like to hear any more, make sure that you're following the channel, and if you have any suggestions for stories that you'd like to hear me read, then get in touch with me on Twitter at archivist_the. Sleep well.